Feature the brilliant guitar work of the man sitting in the studio with me here live on this Monday on Eddie Trunk Live. It is the one and only Steve Vai. Good to see you, man.
Hey, good to see you, Eddie. Thanks for having me, man.
Some blast from the past here and that stuff again?
Yeah, some of it I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, I bet. Do you ever go back and listen to your old records, like stuff you did with bands and stuff?
You know, occasionally I do, and I pulled out the Eat 'em and Smile record probably about a year ago. And you know, when you do records like that, it's like a little snapshot of a time in your life, and it was just so interesting listening to it. I could actually smell the backstage area.
So, do you have fond memories though of that?
Oh yeah, man.
I'm sure.
It was a great time. I mean, you know, it was few gigs you could just be a rock star overnight.
Yeah.
You know, and with Dave Roth, right after he left Van Halen at the peak, and he put that band together, it was just amazing. It was a shocker. I was talking to somebody about it last night. Just to be out on tour like that, playing arenas. And it was really amazing.
We had a debate on the TV show of the best band, Roth's band with you in it versus Van Halen at the time, and it was a spirited debate. There is a large faction of people that feel that Roth's solo band with you in it, of course, was like the band at the time. I mean, that was I mean, both bands obviously are special, but it was an interesting sort of debate. And the two albums you did with Roth, I was not as much into Skyscraper as the first album. I don't know how you feel about it. I just felt that the first album was maybe more Van Halen-esque, in your face, production, sound, everything about it. I know there's a lot of fans of Skyscraper though, but I don't know if you have a preference. Do you?
Well, you know, Eat 'em and Smile, Ted Templeman was the producer. And it was a very raw record. When we went into the studio, you know, a lot of the tracks were cut live. But, you know, Dave didn't want to keep repeating himself, you know, and wanted to do some different things. And he wanted to do some producing. So he took on the reins. And, you know, the stuff on Skyscraper, I think for him was it was an opportunity to experiment a bit. I mean, there's still some hard-hitting stuff on there, but, you know, it doesn't have the visceral looseness of something like Eat 'em and Smile.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Steve Vai is my guest. We're going to talk about what Steve, obviously, his amazing career as a solo artist in a second. But before we do, I also played Judgment Day from Whitesnake, the one album you did with Whitesnake. What are your recollections about being in that band? Because I have some thoughts about that as a fan and as an observer. But I'm curious what your experience was like, and if you felt comfortable in that band.
Well, elements of it were very comfortable. And some points were a little difficult, and it was really just in my mind because the previous record that Whitesnake made, that record that was so big,
the '87 record with John Sykes,
that was a beautiful, amazing record,
right?
You know, and Whitesnake had a real mystique, you know. So then they went to make the next record, and they had recorded the tracks, and you know, Sykes was replaced by Vandenberg, but then Vandenberg had a problem with his hand. He has like a carpal tunnel thing, and it was really difficult to play. So David wanted to get another guitar player, and at the time I had just released Passion and Warfare, and I couldn't in my head wrap around how I would be able to go out on tour with something like Passion and Warfare. And when he asked me to join the band, I really thought that record was great. You know, that one record that I did. Thanks. And also the the one record that they did, you know, that '87 record.
Right, yeah, agreed. Yeah.
And I just thought David Coverdale was one of the greatest singers in rock. I mean, he had this intense presence in his voice, and so I thought, yeah. Now, I came in and I did the guitars. The songs and the tracks were actually written. And I had a great time, and, you know, David, you know, enjoyed it. I think after you have a record like that '87 record that sold, 25 million copies or something ridiculous.
Yeah, huge.
There's like a few bands in history that match that kind of success.
Yeah.
Maybe AC/DC did it, you know, maybe Led Zeppelin, you know. But, you know, the record sold, slip of the tongue, I don't know, 3 or 4 million, which is still, you know, very
And it just got reissued. That's why I bring it up too, because it got reissued, and I know that there was a concert DVD of Donington with you guys playing that just came out. So there's been there's been a lot of people in and out of Whitesnake, and you were there for a short time. But I was just curious what your thoughts were about, you know, your experience doing it.
Well, I enjoyed it, you know, because I had I loved touring like that back then. You know, playing arenas where David was great. he's a wonderful guy. He was great to tour with, and everybody in the band was, pretty tight. There were some elements on the tour that were a little uncomfortable, but they didn't even have much to do with the band. The band was cool.
When you go into situations like that, we're talking live with Steve Vai, and our number here is 866-315-2663. It's up on the radios now. When you go into a situation like that, Steve, and it's not happened all that often, but where you're put in a place where you're going to play other people's stuff, your interpretation of other people's stuff. Yeah. You came in after the '87 record, huge record. So between you and Adrian, you're playing, what John Sykes did predominantly on that record. You go into the Roth band and you're covering some Van Halen stuff. Mm-hmm. What's your approach to that as a player in your own right? Do you try to do it faithfully, or do you put your own spin on it?
Well, when people come to the concert, they're expecting a certain amount of faithfulness to the arrangement. I'm not gonna, if I'm gonna be playing Panama or, in the still of the night, the notes are the notes.
Yeah.
It goes like this, Now, I would do my best to contribute, because my style isn't so far removed from the rock guitar players of the 80s. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I would try to be as respectful as I can to the arrangement, the guitar parts, but it would have to sound like me. I wouldn't try to sound like... you can't sound like Edward.
Right.
You just can't.
Right.
I mean, I've sat, on several occasions and have played with Edward, just like as close as we're sitting.
Really?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And
Publicly or privately?
Once at Frank's house. And Zappa, Frank Zappa.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
So was that a jam? Was that?
Yeah, it was a jam. It was really wild.
Was it documented? Was it recorded in any way? Oh my God! Can you imagine Zappa, Eddie Van Halen, and Steve Vai knocking around?
Yeah, it was really great.
Whoa, my God! Why wasn't there a camera or recorder in there?
I know. Well, they didn't exist on iPhones back then.
Oh gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was great. And one of the things you realize is his sound is in his head and his fingers. You can't sound like that, and I played Brian May's guitar through his amplifiers, and it doesn't sound like Brian May, it sounds like me.
And with Brian May, there's only one guitar, right?
There's only one guitar, yeah, right, exactly, right?
Yeah, I've seen that a lot too. I don't remember who, it may have actually been an interview I read, or somebody, or I think I had John Sykes on here speaking of him once, and somebody called in and said, how do you get, what's your rig, how do you get that sound and this and that, and he was telling the story, but at the end of the day, it's what makes a guitar player unique. It's what comes out of his hands.
Yeah, and that Whitesnake record that John did, he has a very distinctive sound all over that record.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I could tell you, well, he used a harmonizer and it's highly compressed and all that, but still, the sound is in his fingers.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would just, my sound is in my fingers, and everybody's sound is in their head and their fingers. So that's the difference. I would play the notes that are in the chords the way they're supposed to be, but it would be my fingers and it would sound like me.
For sure, yeah. All right, so we have a lot to talk about with Steve. He's got some time here for us in this first hour. He's got a day off from his current tour in support of his new album, The Story of Light, which, of course, is we're going to talk about what Steve is doing now. I thought it was interesting to cover that period a little bit, because as we led into the interview, I gave, this being a hard rock show, people, their most common ground of the stuff that, some of the stuff you're known for in the past. Of course, there's much more than that, but I wanted to touch on that because I always find those stories so interesting. But what you're doing now, I had a chance to witness and even play a small role in this past Saturday night.
Did you tell anybody that story?
I've said it. I got pictures and I sent out some tweets and I posted a little something online, but I have not talked about it on the air yet. But we'll get to that in a second. But you have a new album out called The Story of Light. You're touring in support of it. We're going to play some stuff from it tonight as well. This album is a sort of continuation of your last studio album, right?
Well, yeah, it's when I approached this record, I approached it similar to my other solo records as far as the music goes, but I wanted to add another dimension, and back when I did my last studio record, Real Illusions, in 2005, I had a story that I wanted to kind of express, through the music in a sense, over a handful of records, but not hit people over the head with it. I wanted to still make it an accessible kind of a listening you know, record filled with songs that are Vai-esque type songs.
Right.
But you know, the story is kind of expressed in some of the lyrics and the liner notes. Not the whole story, but little snippets of it. And the idea is to release another installment at some point in the future that would be the third installment of songs, and then in the future take the 3 records and maybe add another record and put narrative and change some of the songs that have guitar melodies to vocals, and then have it as if it's a very linear, accessible story that you would be able to listen to from beginning to end.
And then maybe do it as a big, I envision a big stage production. It would lend itself to that.
It would lend itself to that, yeah.
Your wall, if you will.
Yeah, it would, but what I'd like to do, and you know, you can imagine these things and put them on your radar, but it'll be a while before that happens. And I'm looking forward to unique technology. I'm looking into holographic technology right now. I'm talking to this company in San Diego, because I think that there's going to be a huge evolution happening pretty soon with technology, as always. You know, there's always an evolution. And when the time comes to actually take this story and create some kind of a visual experience from it, I want to mix all these different formats. You know, the artist that did all of the artwork for the packages, her name is Andrea Cobb, and if you ever get a chance to check out her work, it's just breathtaking. It's brilliant, you know, and I see it coming to life, you know. And there's all sorts of different ways to animate. There's all sorts of different ways to shoot on film. And I really believe that holographic technology is going to start becoming very popular. So I'm looking forward to trying to create an experience that takes all of these formats and is a unique kind of experience to show this story.
Mm. Well, I'll tell you what, you know...
Anybody got $10 million, $50 million
exactly,
they want to learn?
Exactly. You can do a lot of things with the big money.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the live show, because you talked about creating an experience, and having just seen the live show a couple nights ago, I want to talk about that as well, because it's pretty incredible. But before we go to that, we'll grab some calls for you if you want to talk to the public for a couple minutes. Again, the number is 866-315-2663, toll-free nationwide, U.S. and Canada. It's Eddie Trunk. After a couple weeks off, I am back live on this Monday, 6:30 in the East, 3:30 in the West, and Steve Vai is in the studio. So if you want to get involved in the show, again, the number is 866-315-2663. We'll grab some calls for Steve in just a little bit. I want to play a track from the record, and then we'll come back, and I want to, in addition to taking the calls, talk a little bit about the live show that I just saw, because beyond the small bit I had in it, which I'm grateful for, and we'll fill everybody in, the show really, really knocked my socks off for a lot of reasons, and we'll get into that when we come back. But the song I want to play, if it's okay with you, is you did it in the show Saturday, and I just love the hell out of Gravity Storm.
Sure, go for it.
And this being, again, more of a hard rock thing, this song is just, there's a sound in this, it's got a swagger to it, this song, that I told you that I thought almost had a little bit of a Zeppelin-esque sort of groove to it. But you mentioned to me on my other radio show when you were on the other day that you actually, there's something you went for in your string bending or something in this?
Well, yeah, I mean, when you bend notes on the guitar a particular way, it can have sort of the illusion of weight, you know, and by bending the phrases down, you know, at the end of each phrase with the notes, it was giving me this illusion of heaviness that was very different than just tuning the guitar down and going chugga chugga chugga. You know, so that's why it's called Gravity Storm, because it has this pull to it.
Yeah, it's really cool. Let's check it out. Steve Vai's new album, again, The Story of Light, is available now. This track is called Gravity Storm. Crank it up, and then we'll come back with more conversation and some phone calls for the great Steve Vai, who's in studio. It's Eddie Trunk Live, Sirius XM 39. That is so cool. It's called Gravity Storm. It's brand new from Steve Vai. It's on his new album, The Story of Light. And Steve is live in the studio with me here, Eddie Trunk Live, Sirius XM 39, on this Monday. And yeah, you got some bending going on there, man.
Yeah.
That is very, very cool. And that is your song that Steve is doing in the live set, because I saw you perform just this past Saturday night. It's amazing, man, because I have not seen you play live. I'm not sure when I did last, but not being a musician myself, I can understand how a musician could watch a largely instrumental set of music for, you play 2.5 hours?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But as a guy who can't play a note of anything, you know, I wonder, I have a hard time watching mostly instrumental music for that long of a period of time without zoning out and without kind of being like, okay, I get it. Or saying, you know, okay, I've kind of figured this out and, you know, I've got my taste of it and I'm going to go and split. Clearly, I didn't never split because if I would, you would have found out, which we'll lead to in a second. But I was never bored for 2.5 hours. I was completely, even though from a playing standpoint, I had no clue. I just knew it was amazing. I don't play, so. But the way you put that show together, first of all, your band's phenomenal. The guys in your band are phenomenal. You give them all an opportunity to shine on their own throughout the show. And I thought the pacing, and I'm sure you put a lot into this, but the pacing of the show was great, where you've got something like Gravity Storm, and then you went into an acoustic moment, and then you... So, I mean, that's all, I guess, comes with the process of you finding out what works after all these decades, right? To deliver this stuff in the best way, in the most entertaining way on the live stage.
Well, I'm kind of like you in that if I was to go to an instrumental show for 2.5 hours, I'd, almost, no matter who it would be, I might be pretty bored too. So when I put a show together in my mind, I put it together as if I was sitting in the audience thinking, what's going to keep my attention, what's going to be interesting, what's going to make it dimensional and dynamic. Because, yeah, I mean, to a lot of people, a guitar solo sounds like a series of Morse code. So I want to bring something to the stage that's a little more, dimensional. So you saw what happens. There's a,
You change wardrobes. You're like a Broadway performer. Steve, Lady Gaga's got nothing on Steve Vai. Steve comes out. Steve's got like four or five different wardrobe changes, and maybe the most insane one is you have the light up suit with like a welder's mask or something in front of you.
Yeah, it's all theater. Ham is cooking, man. I'm a total ham.
But it looks so cool from the stage, and it's just another piece of keeping it interesting.
Yeah, but also, with the performance aspect, it's very important to me that there's musical substance, and it's not just fast notes. It's not. I want to be really careful about just being an indulgent kind of an extroverted experience because it gets boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to keep people with you and make them feel like they're part of it.
Well, that's exactly it, and that's what I was saying, and the guys from Seven Dust were there as well, and we were talking about this, is that you have all the fireworks in your fingertips that you want as far as the runs and the shreds and all that stuff. But you get a good dose of that, which is what you want that. But you also come with that other side where these beautiful melodies and stuff that, maybe most of the songs don't have vocals, but you're singing in your own way.
Yeah.
It's really remarkable. I mean, I found that one of the most incredible things about the show was the pacing, the production, and the other thing beyond your playing ability, your performance. In other words, you are not a guy that stands there locked up, in one little circle on the stage. I mean, the way you express yourself when you play, were you always like that? Were you always an outgoing sort of performer, keeping the performance end in mind?
Well, it's changed, yeah. Ever since I was a little kid, before I was even playing, I would imagine this performer in my head. And he was moving all over the place, and he was playing effortlessly, and, and I would imagine this. And you become what you think about, and I like moving, A lot of times in the past, a lot of the running around on the stage, like with the big bands we were just talking about, it was a different it was a show. You had to run, and there was a lot of space, and you couldn't just stand there. But some of it's like forced, because you're pushing yourself, sometimes. And I shouldn't say forced, it's like it's part of the gig. But as I grew into my independent music career and performing, my goal was to sort of become, allow my body to become the music, so to speak, so that, and I still work on it every show. Some things are very natural, and some things I got to let happen because I can tell when I'm trying to force something, and that's when you got to pull back and just, let the natural, organic movement of the music kind of infiltrate your body. So that's what I work on. I like to be visual and audible.
But
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Because and that's one of the reasons why I'm, beyond the fact that I love the hell out of it, I'm so glad I saw the show now that I'm talking to you, because it totally makes sense, because it it's a channeling of everything that just seems to be running through you, through the guitar, through you, and out into that audience, which is, you know, just captivated for 2.5 hours. Yeah. It's really remarkable. I really can't think of anyone, and obviously there's some other brilliant musicians out there, but in the way you present this, I think
now
it's
I'm blushing.
No, but I'm saying it because in the way you present it, it is so important, I think, to the overall delivery. If you were a guy that just stood there with a light on you and hammered away for 2.5 hours,
I would get really bored if I was watching that.
Yeah, and I think the audience would too, as great as you are. So it's really an interesting, really, really cool show, and you're out for a while longer with it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We have the America's 2 months, and then we have about 5 days off, and then I'm in Europe for 2 months, and then I actually have to take off for 6 months because I'm writing a symphony.
Wow.
And then
is that for yourself or someone else? Or?
It's for the North Netherlands Orchestra in Holland. It's for a Stravinsky festival. It's the 100th anniversary of the first performance of The Rite of Spring. And you know, I compose, but even my composition is different than, you know, what you might think. Oh, does it sound like classical music? Not really. I mean, I'll be playing the guitar in it.
Right.
But then after that, I'm out in the, you know, I get to go to all these great places because there's guitar players all around the world, you know, so I'll be going to like Africa and India and Dubai, and we have we got offers now in from Malaysia, Hong Kong, China, Taipei. I've been to a lot of these places, you know, multiple times, and then South America and back to Australia. So it's really, you know, there's a lot of ground to cover. So
where are some of your favorite, because we were talking about this the other day, you still love being on the road, clearly. You love touring and you love the whole process.
Yeah.
Of the places you've all around the globe that have seen Steve Vai shows, where for you is the most rabid fan base? Where do you have your biggest concentration of fans?
You know, the Latin countries like South America, Italy, they're pretty crazy. And in Russia. Mm-hmm. I have a really huge fan base in Russia because a very interesting story in the 90s when the wall came down and they didn't have Western music. I mean, to get before that, to have a Beatles CD or something like that, they didn't even know what, you know, it wasn't very popular at all.
They got it on the black market, like bootlegs, right?
Yeah, but you can get a lot of trouble, you know.
Just by having it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Know, I mean, that was back in the, you know, the heavy communist regime.
Sure.
But then when the wall came down and they started getting all this music coming in, it was relatively new. And my Passion and Warfare record came out in 90, and that's when they started taking, you know, a lot of Western music, so the guitar fans really embraced it, you know, and on the list of, they were telling me, you know, on the list of top guitar players in Russia, they said I was #1, and like Jimi Hendrix was 25.
Wow.
Because they just didn't know it.
Right,
it's different now because they've been Americanized to a sense. So going there, they're really kind of intense and great.
Yeah. Two more things on the live show, and then we'll grab some calls and we'll let you go, and I'll play some more of your music after you because I want to talk to you while you're here. And again, I appreciate you coming in because we were talking before. You've been going 6 nights straight. Your first night off. You're from New York originally. You're here. Your wife's waiting. I'm sure you got dinner planned. So I appreciate you coming in for the show for a little bit.
No worries. I really enjoy seeing you and coming in.
Well, thanks. You have in your show, going with the visual theme and everything, you have a harp player.
Yes.
Which was really trippy, especially from the audience, because the harp lights up.
Yeah.
And she is out there jumping around with this, what she said was an 11, 12-pound harp.
Yeah.
Where did that idea come from? How did you find her?
Well, you know,
what is her name? I'm sorry, I don't know.
Deborah Henson Conant.
Okay.
And the way that happened was, my last band, I had the 2 violin players, and I knew I could make it work. You know, at the core of the music, there's a lot of rock sensibilities, but there's a lot of, you know, orchestration too. So I made those violins work, and they were beautiful. You know, I released that DVD, Where the Wild Things Are. Mm-hmm. And in putting this band together, I wanted to do this. You know, the core of the band has, the Jeremy Colson on drums, and Philip Ino on bass, Dave Weiner on guitar, and then myself, which is, you know, it's a rock element, but my music allows me the opportunity to kind of put some different textures in. So when I was thinking, what can I do that's interesting, is a little left of center, but will work. You know, I just started surfing around the internet, and I saw this woman. She's very famous in the harp community because she's like considered the hip harpist, you know?
Right.
And she plays this strap-on harp, and it's electric, so we can put it through all sorts of devices and stuff. And a lot of my music has like a lot of arpeggiated guitar parts when I'm playing solos on top of them and stuff. So it could, I knew it would work. And I knew it would be an interesting visual and texture for the music. But, I mean, what did you think?
I thought, I mean, it's fascinating to watch. I mean, I don't think I've ever been to a show where you see a woman, you know, jumping around with a harp, a strap-on harp that's lit up. I don't know if all harps light up, but this has lights.
Well, no, we had to put the lights on.
It's really cool because the lights are going across. There were times where I heard her more prominently than others.
Sure.
But her solo spot I really loved.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool because, again, Steve, you know, when you go back and you get some fresh clothes on or whatever, you know, there's a drum solo, which was cool because, you know, he's wearing the drums all around him. And there's all these moments, and it's never, like I said, it's never dull for a minute, but I thought it was great, too, how she kind of came out and, you know, introduced herself, talked about the harp,
yeah.
and she said something to the effect of, these are the pegs that enable me to change keys, and if you know Steve Vai, we change keys a lot.
Yeah, when you see her playing, it's like, she looks like one of those old operators, and you know, where they have to keep
Exactly.
plugging in the, you know.
It was so great. And then you also had another, and that's the other thing too. You're clearly having fun up there because you have a great sense of humor about stuff.
Yeah.
You introduced your second guitar player, and you said you can get his CD at the merch booth when everybody leaves as the drum solo's going on. which of course is a goof because Jeremy obviously is amazing.
Oh, he's
but,
amazing. Yeah.
It's really cool to see that. You know, especially what you do. There's such a, you know, you have very serious musician-y fans, but to have that sort of approach about it is great. So
well, you know, first and foremost, I think that you know, I want to present a show that people feel they're getting something out of and is interesting, and I just want to be the best performer I can be. And for me, that means trying to have all those elements of musicianship, you know, lightheartedness and dense music sometimes, and then, you know, those acoustic moments, and then that very special moment in the show where we build a song on stage.
Well, that's the next thing. I'm there. That show's maybe this past Saturday, 2 hours in, and this is something you do every night, right?
I do it every night.
Have you always been doing it? You've been doing it for a long time, or just
on
this
this tour? It's just an idea I came up with.
So, Steve, I'm sitting there, and I'm, like I said, enjoying the show. It's about 2 hours into the 2.5 hour show, and Steve says, when I spoke to you, Al, I'm always interested in the songwriting process, and I talked to you on Friday on my other show about this, and you tell this story about people writing songs and people asking you about your writing process. And then Steve says from the stage, well, we're going to write a song right now. We're just going to come up with something. And long story short, you call me up.
Well, what I do is at that part of the show, I basically say, you know, people ask me all the time, how do you write a song? And I said, you know, I don't know. To me, I think anybody could write a song, and I'll prove it to you. And then I pick somebody from the audience, and we've had some amazing. One day I picked these 3 little kids. They were like 8, 9, 10, and 11 years old, you know, and I can whenever they come up, whoever comes up, I can make a song out of it. And I knew you were in the audience, and I knew you'd get a kick out of doing this.
Oh, it was a blast! Thank you.
I called Eddie up onto the stage, but what he didn't know was that the guys from Seven Dust were there. Morgan, Cliff, and John, you know, and they're really great guys, you know, and I brought them out on stage too to do this for that section.
I know.
And it turned out great.
It was so crazy because it was surreal because I never saw it coming, for one.
Yeah.
And number two, I had no idea. The Seven Dust guys, I mean, what are they doing in New Jersey? I live 5 minutes from that venue, but I'm like, what are they doing in a theater in New Jersey? And they're up there, and they're shitting because they're on stage with Steve Vai playing in front of you. And I'm shitting because I'm staying Does he know I can't play a note? Like when you said Eddie's going to come over and do a song, I thought you expected me. You're going to put a guitar on me. I'm like, I can't play anything.
No, I wouldn't do that to somebody. That would be a disaster.
Well, I thought maybe you'd give me a lesson or something. I learned how to play a chord, but
no, but it was more fun, right?
So fun. And tell people what you do because you don't need to know how to play anything.
No. I get anybody up on the stage and I say, okay, we're going to build a song and you're going to build it. So sing a drum beat. And some people, last night the guy was so great, you know, he just started like singing this drum beat. And sometimes people go, one time this kid goes, I don't know. And I went, donkonka, donkonka. I don't know, you know. And Jeremy just picks it right up. Boom, boom, bah. Yeah. That's a drum beat, I don't know. Right. You know, and or I'd say, what's your name? And they'd say, da 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 da. Boom, boom, gata gata. Boom, boom, gata. And it's a drum beat. You came up with a great one. I said, sing a drum beat. And the first thing you said was, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I said, let me make that a drum. I said, no, Eddie, I'm going to give him an opportunity.
It's kind of on the spot because I didn't know anything about the bit or what we were doing.
Yeah, and that's the fun part.
The funniest part is Morgan's behind the drums because Morgan was there. So Jeremy left. Your drummer moves off to let Morgan up there. And Morgan's looking at me on stage petrified going, you better do something easy, man. You know, he thought he was going to come out with some wild thing. And I'm just like, I don't know. I just was thinking that We Will Rock You sort of thing.
And that's what you sang. You went boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka. And all of a sudden, Morgan just was like, well, I can do that. And then he was like, boom, shoot, bah, and he made this great groove. I mean, it's that simple, really. And then I said, sing a bass part. And you did something, and, you know, we heard it, and we hear it, and Phil is like, he's got perfect pitch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he heard it, and it was very simple. He made the bass part, and then, you know, and then we built it, and it was, you really, because you started getting comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
And that was funny, because you're like, okay, I see. Yeah, asked for publishing. I was like, well, you'll have to speak to my attorneys, Roper Bender.
I'm writing a song. Who gets the publishing on this?
I just said, you have to speak to my attorneys, Roper, Bender, and Raper. You know?
See what happens? I'm there 3 minutes, and you get full of yourself. No wonder why the music business is
That's
in
right.
Oh, what a blast it was, though. Thank you. And afterwards, me and the Seven Dust guys were all so jacked that we had that opportunity. It was so much fun, you know.
It was, and you wrote a great song, and you sang me a melody, which was.
You asked me for my daughter's name, and then you turned that into the song. My daughter's name is Elizabeth.
Right.
You said, "What's your daughter's name?" I said, "Elizabeth," and then you came up with some phrasing.
Well, the first thing you did was when I said, "Sing me a melody," and you said, "I can't sing," and I said, "Just go ah," and you screamed something. And I picked that, but I needed something with more dynamic, so I just, you know, and you said Elizabeth, so I went, the melody turned into, you know, so it was your screaming and then Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And that became a great melody. And one of the funniest things was John Connolly, the guitarist, one of the guitarists in Seven Dust. We didn't have another guitar rig, so he played one of the spare harps.
Oh, that's right. That's right, because you said that your metal creds out the window. You're walking around on stage with a giant harp around your neck.
Yeah, and at the end of the song, we arranged it so that there would be this great drum-off, you know, trading, because you know, Morgan is Jeremy's hero. You know, Jeremy idolizes Morgan. One of his greatest influences.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's how they got. You know, I mean, he's been talking about Morgan for years and years. You know, so it was amazing for Jeremy to be playing that little kit and then trading off. And then right at the end, I cued the whole band to just stop. And John Connolly on the harp, I gave him a solo, and there's this big guy covered in tattoos, you know, facial hair on this little harp going, tinka, 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 and then boom, we end the song.
Oh, man, it was so much fun.
That was really just a total, thanks for being a good sport about it.
Oh, well, thank you for calling me up there. Do you still, when you're not on tour, do you play a lot? Do you play every day? Are you always picking up your guitar?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever, because I've talked to, I forget who off the top of my head, but really major established players who say they still will take a lesson from somebody to get other ideas and other. Have you ever done that? Have you ever sat with, or not necessarily a traditional lesson, but at least worked with somebody to kind of trade ideas? I mean, I know early on that Satriani was the guy that you know kind of taught you, but.
Well, you can always go to somebody that has like you can share ideas and stuff, and you can take lessons, and you know I'm always trying to kind of expand upon my playing, you know, and I don't get to play every day sometimes. You know, there might be a period of like a week I'm on vacation, or I'd take a few days off, just give my hands a break or something. But with the internet and YouTube, I can watch virtually any guitar player. I actually created this site called Guitar TV. If you just type in Guitar TV, it's like 24/7, back-to-back amazing guitar performances from all walks of life. You could see like Ace Frehley doing his solo where he lights the guitar and it shoots the rockets, or you can watch Joe Pass. It goes on and on and on. So that's very inspirational. But there's guys that I've seen play, and I thought if I got together with him and even took a lesson, I bet there's things that I can learn.
Are there a couple guys you can tell me that you've seen like that you'd love to kind of make that connection with at some point?
Well, yeah, sure. Scott Henderson was, I thought I'd love to get together with him and share some ideas because he's really great. Alan Holdsworth, these guys are like crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy good.
Is Alan Holdsworth still active playing?
Yeah.
I don't really hear much about him anymore.
He still plays all the time. He just hasn't made a record. It's funny, I signed him to my label, I don't know, 10 years ago, and he never delivered a record.
Really?
Yeah, he just tours, he just kind of tours, which is a shame because he's one of the greatest musical giants on the guitar that ever lived. But he's playing in little places. And
yeah, I remember working in a record store. I think was it IOU, the album he had. That was a huge. Yeah. We sold it on import and as an independent. Constantly, people came in for that.
Yeah.
And I never really heard him, but I know that he was a massively influential guy to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And there's other guitar players like. Have you ever heard of Tommy Emmanuel?
No.
Oh my God. Man, this guy, he plays acoustic guitar.
Mm-hmm.
He's just so brilliant, Eddie. I mean, you watch this guy play, it's like an orchestra playing the guitar. And I would take lessons from him because he has techniques that are beyond my style. I have a kind of a very esoteric style to my playing, But if I wanted to learn, like extend myself in that kind of field, I'd have to, it would behoove me to go and talk to somebody that really has it down.
Right. Because you don't think of a guy as accomplished as a player as yourself, still trying to learn, but you never stop learning, I would think.
No, none of us do, I think. And I don't have any aspirations to go into other fields of music like that, guitar playing. My goal is to find my strengths and focus on those and forget about my weaknesses.
Yeah.
I mean, my weakness is if it's playing, classical guitar, I don't care. What I really focus on is those esoteric kind of things that I do on the guitar.
Right. Well, one more quick one from me, and I know it's at 7. I know you wanted to split, but we've got
cool.
people one round of quick calls if you don't mind, because people have been waiting to talk to you, and I promised we'd get some people on the air, but I can't stop yapping. But the last thing, and I asked you this, from me at least, the last thing I asked you this on my show on Friday as well, but for this audience, if you could address it. We mentioned Satriani, we mentioned the fact that when we started this conversation almost an hour ago, I started it by playing your work with David Lee Roth and your work in Whitesnake. You've done that. Satriani just joined a band as well with Chickenfoot.
Yeah.
Do you have any aspirations you have such a huge career as a solo artist, you just mentioned you're all over the world doing your thing, but is there a side of you that would consider going into that world again and teaming up with 3-4 other guys and doing more of a straight up traditional kind of rock thing like Satch is doing with Chickenfoot? Do you have any desire to do a band again?
Well, at different points in the last 20 years, I would probably have given different answers. But the way I feel about it now is I leave all the doors open. If something extraordinary came along that I feel where I can retain like the musical integrity and not do it because it could be really big and sell a lot of records, and if it was really the right people. Like, for instance, I just did this track, Highway Star, for, that...
the Purple tribute. I think I have it right here, actually.
Yeah, I really like the way it turned out, and listening to Glenn Hughes sing, oh my God, I mean, that guy, he's just a freak.
Glenn's a good friend. I mean, he is ridiculous singer, and, I mean, the way You read his book, you talk to him, he's amazed he's still alive, let alone alive and in the best shape of his life.
Yeah, he looks and sounds great.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, but,
unbelievable.
You know, I mean, I wouldn't...
And there's another guy, Bonamassa, is doing Black Country with Glenn.
Yeah.
You know, although that's been a struggle because Joe's career as a solo artist is huge, and I think there's some frustration there because they can't dedicate as much time to BCC as they'd like.
Yeah.
So that's the trade-off. I mean, that's
the trade-off
too.
Part. That's the, you know, and you really, it would have to be. I think like what Joe is doing with Chickenfoot is very easily navigated because those guys can make a record and do a little tour, and Joe can go back to his solo work. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But to break a band, you got to work your ass off and tour your ass off.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And I'm very happy doing the music I do.
Yep.
You know, like I say, I wouldn't necessarily foo-foo a certain idea, but it would have to be extraordinary.
Steve Vai is my guest. We're live on Sirius XM. It's Eddie Trunk. Let Steve get out of here in a couple seconds. He's been generous with his time here on a night off from his tour. Go to Vai.com to find a date near you. He's going to be out there for a while. Again, the new album is The Story of Light. Play another track from it before we let him go. But I promised you guys phone calls, and we'll go quickly through this first round of them just so that we can get a few of you guys involved in the show. 866-315-2663. Lines are all jammed. They'll clear up as we answer. And we will go to Rochester and say hi to Ken. Ken, you're on with Steve Vai.
Hey, guys. How you doing tonight?
Great. How you doing,
Good, Ken? Thanks.
Oh, good. Hey, Steve, I got a question for you. I'm going to go way back to about 1985. Guitar for the Practicing Musician. You did an interview when I didn't really know who you were, but you had mentioned you were kind of appalled of the way the Alcatraz album came out that you were on. And you had mentioned that you had, I believe you had the masters, and you said, "Mate, one day I'm going to put it out the way I envisioned it." And do you think that'll ever come to the light of day? And did you ever get any flack about your comments about how that was produced? And
Well, you know, thanks for your question, and it actually gives me an opportunity to clear up certain things. I was a pretentious prick. Okay? I really was back then. I just thought that the way that I wanted to do things was the best way and the only way. But, and as a result, when I was working with anybody, not anybody, but in certain capacities, when it involved my contribution, it had to be a particular way. And that kind of attitude dissolved once I started entering the real world and started working with really talented people. Like, for instance, that Alcatraz record, Eddie Kramer produced it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Eddie Kramer. And when you listen to Flexible, which was the record I produced, thinking this is the way you produce records, and then working with someone like Eddie Kramer, who produced Jimi Hendrix and
Zeppelin,
and all this
sure.
stuff. And I'm, you know, and me thinking, well, the Alcatraz record sounds a certain way, but it doesn't sound the way, it doesn't sound like Flexible. I mean, I'm talking the audio, not the music. So it must be wrong. That's how pretentious I was and arrogant, you know, when in reality, Eddie Kramer was doing, you know, he was doing the great stuff. He was doing the right thing. And it took me years to kind of get out of that frame of mind. Because when I then joined Dave Roth, I was working with Ted Templeman. And I knew that, you know...
More sacred ground.
Yeah, it's
right.
More sacred ground. And I wised up. And I realized that these people have a vision, and their vision is part of what this band is. And I have a contribution to that vision. It's not my vision, you know? And I learned a lot. I learned a lot of humility. And I embarrassed some people, and I was very rude when I would say things like that. You know, I was appalled by the way that record came out. That was my arrogance. When I listen to that record now, I think it's exactly the way it should be. But it took time, you know, for me to realize what a little box I lived in.
Did you struggle with that, with all the accolades that came your way so quickly? Did you kind of get to be, you know, because I've gotten to know you fairly well in like the last 10 years or so, but I mean, prior to that, back in those days, were you, interestingly enough, the guy you replaced in Alcatraz, Yngwie, was notorious for being, he's better now, but being a little bit out of his mind and a little bit of an egomaniac and difficult to deal with. Was that said about Steve Vai back then?
Well, I can't
Or
remember.
was it more of a personal thing where you just kind of you shot off the cuff without any concern for the
I was very,
repercussions?
I was very territorial about certain things, and production and stuff like that. That I was very like the way that I would compare myself to other guitar players, there wasn't a lot of real arrogance there because I always thought everybody was better than me in a sense. I know it sounds odd, but when it came to how I wanted to express myself in a particular situation, I was fiercely protective, and it took a bit of letting go, to be able to get that side of the best of me to come out.
I think that album, Jim on our TV show just held that record up. I don't know if it aired yet, but I think it did come out remixed and repackaged. It's definitely repackaged.
It's not remixed, I can tell you that.
Okay, so they did maybe remastered something, but it was reissued on some label I never heard of.
Yeah, and they reissued a couple of things that I believe they didn't have the rights to do.
Well, there you go. Welcome to the music business.
Yeah, that happens.
Dave in Virginia, you're on with Steve Vai. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, hi there, Eddie. Steve.
Hey, you're on the air, man.
Hey, just wanted to let you know, my daughter was called up on stage to build a song at the Howard Theater on August 28th.
Right on, man.
How old is your daughter, Dave?
Kayla, I remember her.
Yes, she's 17, and she had the blue hair.
Yep, I remember her very well. She was very, she did a great job.
Yeah, it was a great show, and that made it a really unbelievable show for that to happen. Kayla's sitting here in the car if you wanted to say hello.
Hey there, Kayla. You did a great job, honey.
All right, Dave, thank you. And Kayla, thank you. We'll have to compare our songs one of these days.
That's right.
Maybe we'll demo them up and we'll see. We'll make a comparison.
You got competition.
Stephen in PA. What's going on, Steve in Pennsylvania? Go ahead. You're on with Steve Vai.
Hey, how you doing? I just wanted to thank him. He was so gracious. I saw him at Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania at the Sherman Theater the 29th of August. And I just wanted to promote that EVO experience that my wife and I did was fabulous. He was so gracious to meet with the few of us that did that. And coolest guy ever and very gracious, as I said. He also signed 2 of my guitars built by his old buddy, Joe Dispacni. So, Steve, wanted to thank you for that evening. You just wild. The meet and greet, the sound check, the time you took. We spent 2.5 hours with him pre-show, and then saw an awesome 2.5-hour, maybe 3-hour show after, and it was fabulous.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Stephen, for the call. That's the best testimonial you want right there from the fans. Unprovoked to come out with that. That's got to make you feel good. Do you change the show a lot, night in and night out? Do you change songs in a lot, or you keep it pretty much?
No, we keep it pretty consistent because some of the songs are pretty challenging, and we shift a couple of things around now and then, but it's pretty consistent. Some of the talking bits, like with the little talking skull,
right?
That we try to. We're working on that a bit because it's a little, campy. But the gent that just called was talking about the Evo experience.
Yes.
Which is the premium package that a lot of bands kind of do, the meet.
VIP package sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah, but I actually sit with folks for about an hour and just have a discussion. And
wow.
Then they come to the sound, they're invited to the sound check, and they get all sorts of little things. And
so people who are interested in that, they do that through your site?
Yeah, they can go to vi.com and get into it.
Very cool. I can't see this person's name or where they're from for some reason, but go ahead. You're on the air. Who's this? Hello.
Oh, hey, this is Dave from New Jersey.
Hey, Dave in Jersey. You're on the air. Go ahead for Steve Vai.
Hey, Steve. I was one of the guitar geeks in the crowd down at the New Brunswick show on Friday night, and you guys put on a fantastic show, and you're a real professional and inspiration. But my question for you is, do you foresee any G3 shows upcoming in the future?
I certainly hope so. It's a little difficult for me to talk about those things until they're booked, but I can tell you that Joe and I, we just did a week before I kicked off this tour. Joe and I and Steve Morse were in Europe, and we went to Moscow and the Ukraine. And a month before that, I was with Joe in Australia. And you have to kind of plan those things so that they're kept interesting. And we had Steve Lukather in Australia. That was very interesting. He's just the best.
Mm.
But yeah, there's I think it's time. It's a good time maybe next year to do a G3. But you got to get, there's logistics involved. Everybody's schedules have to come together and the stars have to align. So I'm really looking forward to a hopeful G3 tour in the next year sometime.
Because even a guy like Steve Morse, who you mentioned, who I had in here not too long ago, but Steve's not only doing Deep Purple, but now he's doing this band called Flying Colors.
Yes, yeah.
With a good friend of mine, Mike Portnoy, and they're out doing some dates around the world. And I know they can only do so many shows because Steve's schedule with Deep Purple is pretty intense.
Yeah.
So it's finding all you guys who are these in-demand, incredible players to come together to play on a G3, I guess, is a challenge at times.
It is. There's a lot of logistics, and especially with Joe, because he has a solo career, he has the chicken foot thing.
Right.
And for him to have even been able to put together this G3, these few tours we just did in Europe and Australia, was phenomenal. Now, but for instance, they're going to South America and Mexico next month, but I can't do it because I've got a European tour booked. But G3 is not necessarily me and Joe. Maybe I've been on most of them, but G3 is Joe's brand, and it ships around. And if it's a good opportunity for him to do a G3 tour, and I'm not available, if other people are, then he'll do it.
Right. Couple more quick ones. I promise I'll let you get out of here.
No worries, Eddie.
Eric in Fort Lauderdale, you're on with Steve Vai. Go ahead, Eric.
Hey, Eddie, what's going on, man?
Good, man. Thanks for waiting. You've been waiting like an hour, so go ahead.
I know. I just want to let you know I hope you have a stroke, you fat fuck.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Thanks for waiting an hour for that. Let's go to Ellen in Kentucky. Hi, Ellen. You're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call, Mr. Trunk.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Vai, my question for you off the top of your head, and out of curiosity, if you were to put your ideal band together, who would be in that?
Well, there's this drummer that I know from the Bay Area. His name is Jeremy Colson. And he was like a punk drummer, but he's got this great attitude and this great energy. And there's this guitar player that I've always loved. His name is Dave Weiner. And he's just completely this bulletproof guy that has amazing retention, that can play impossible stuff and listens really well. And then there's this bass player, one of my favorite bass players in the whole world. His name is Philip Bino. And this guy's got perfect pitch, and he looks incredible, but he plays, whenever you play and he listens, he just follows you brilliantly. And there's this harp player. She plays a strap-on harp, and I always thought it would be amazing to be in a band with her, and her name is Deborah Henson Conant.
Aren't these the people in your band already?
Yes.
Took you a little while to figure that one out, didn't it?
And guess what? That's my band. How lucky am I?
That's who he's currently touring with, Ellen, so that's who you should go see.
That's right.
His dream band is on the road.
That's right.
Okay, and you're not pretentious, Mr. Vai. You're just a good artist, a very good artist.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you, Ellen, for the call. We appreciate it. Let's grab one or two more quick ones and we'll let you go. We'll go out to Seattle. Say hi to Baxter. Hi, Baxter.
Hey, Eddie and Steve. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey.
Sure, man.
My question for Steve is actually in the form of a quote, something Steve said way, way ago, and it goes like this. It's just wire and wood, but I pity the poor sucker that ever tries to sell it. And that's my question for Steve. Does that ring a bell, Steve?
It's just wire and wood, but I pity the poor sucker that tries to sell. Yeah, you know what? I think that came from when I had a whole slew of my guitars stolen.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
I was specifically curious about the Green Meanie, who I actually built a guitar based on that myself because it was such an inspiration at the time. But did that ever come back around?
Well, that one wasn't stolen.
Oh, it wasn't.
No, that one's it's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum.
Well, damnation! Well, I thought that was stolen. That was
No.
stolen. That's
That
why it
one-
was such a sucker because it was so unique. I think the Flame was stolen, wasn't it? The Performance.
Nope. That
Oh,
wasn't
damn it.
stolen either. No, the ones that got stolen were actually. I never let those guitars leave my side. Back
Right
then.
on.
But there was the Flame actually was in two pieces, and the guy that broke into the place to steal it, since he saw that it was in two pieces, he didn't think it was worth anything, so he didn't take it, and that was the most valuable guitar. But I think when I said that, it was because the guitars were pretty identifiable, and anybody that would try to sell them would be an idiot because they'd get caught right away.
Mm.
But they were, I don't know, I never saw them, and, I don't really, I'm not so attached to those things.
Real quick, Jeff in Jacksonville. Go ahead, Jeff, for Steve Vai.
Hey, Eddie, thanks for having me on. And hey, Mr. Vai, how are you doing?
Hey, good, man.
Good. I have a question. I'm not a guitar player. I'm actually a drummer. So I always wondered when a guitarist goes to create a song, and it's impossible for you to know every song that's been created, and there's only so many chords, for a guitar. How do you avoid? How do I put that? How do you avoid copying somebody because I think of like Face of Black by Metallica and how similar some of the acoustic parts sound to Goodbye Blue Sky by Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
And I don't know if James did that intentionally or if it was just an accident.
That happens. Yeah, I see that happening a lot, and it's happened to me on a bunch of occasions where I'll record something and somebody will say, that's the same chord changes or melody as such and such, and I'll think, well, no, it's not. Then they stole it from me, And then I'll listen and I'll go, oh, wow, that is, And it happens. Like I have this song, Tender Surrender, that's like, it sounds, it's very, the structure of it and some of the chord changes are similar to 3 other songs. But it's just, I think when you hear stuff, it's in your head. Sometimes it comes out. And I think you're right to a degree where there's so many chords that you can play on the guitar. There's a lot. And there's almost an infinite amount of ways that you can go from one chord to another. But most of us are stuck in genre-specific culture. And, the musical sensibilities are in a box. So it's very difficult to not do something that hasn't somehow been created by somebody else. But there's always going to be a difference. There's textural differences, there's ways to build melodies on it. And who cares? When you look at the blues, I mean, can you imagine if somebody had a copyright on a 1-4-5 progression?
Right.
What? We'd all go to hell in a handbag,
Right. So there's only so much you can worry about it is basically.
Yeah, why worry? I mean, I was in a very big band that said that. I have a friend that was in a very big band, and he said, the way that we would write our best hit songs was we'd play AC/DC songs and just change a couple of chords, And you heard that great story, and this is a story that I heard. Don't know if it's necessarily true, but I've heard that Jimmy Page was talking to George Harrison, and he was talking about that song "Something." He goes, "How did you write that song? It's such a beautiful song. There's something in the way you do." Da, 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 da. And he said, and George Harrison says, "Well, you know what? I was listening to this song that I really like, and I just kind of lifted it and just made it my own, and making little changes." And Page went home and wrote the Rain song.
Oh, and there you go. That is.
It is something.
There is something. Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun,
yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's all connected somewhere down the line.
And I've done it. I've heard songs that I've really liked, that I've been really inspired by, and I'll kind of say, I want to write something kind of similar to this.
Yeah.
But you can. I mean, everybody does that. I'm telling you right now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But to write something original, really uniquely original, is really very, very difficult.
Teddy Trunk Live with Steve Vai. I promise you, you're going to get out of here in a second. These guys have been waiting forever, though. Real quick, James in Burbank. Go ahead, James.
Hey guys, great show. Hey Steve, I think if you and Buckethead did some...
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, hold on. I think I got you back. Hold on.
Well, let me see if I can.
Sorry, James. So I accidentally lost you there.
Let me see if I can finish a sentence.
Something about you and Buckethead doing
to do something together. That would be really cool.
And he also said that in his comments on the screen, he wanted to know why you use Ibanez.
Okay, I'll answer those two very quickly. It's funny because when Buckethead, there was a period there where people thought I was Buckethead.
So people thought Paul Gilbert was Buckethead too.
They thought Paul Gilbert was.
I never heard you. I always heard Paul Gilbert.
Paul Gilbert. They thought Paul Gilbert was Buckethead, and more than they thought I was. But still, there was some people that thought I was, because I do interviews and people would ask me. And I remember I met Buckethead once, and I walked up to him, and he had his bucket on, and I go, "Hey man, it's funny. A lot of people think that I'm you."
I get a picture with him.
And he looks at me and he goes, "Sorry, Steve." But yeah, he's a fiercely talented guy. And the reason I use Ibanez is because back when I designed the Gem, they made the guitar that was most, closest to the guitar I designed.
Okay.
And they're just a great company.
Owen in Orlando said if they made another Bill and Ted's, would you be the music man?
Very unlikely.
And this guy, last one from Denver. Mark, go ahead. Mark, you're the final caller.
Hey, thank you. Greetings. First off, Eddie, thank you for all you do with that metal show. And Steve, I have a question for you. Back in 2008, I had the opportunity to fly into Southern California for your first Alien Guitar Secrets class. And it was absolutely amazing to sit there for 3 hours and have you share a lot about what makes you the greatest guitar player on the face of the planet. At the end of the session, I asked you a question, and you smiled and never answered it, and I'm going to ask it again.
All right.
On Passion and Warfare, on the song The Audience is Listening, there's a quote in there that says, Frankie, we're not going to have another incident like Mildred. Who's Frankie, and what was the incident with Mildred?
I'm smiling.
You're still not getting the answer, Mark.
I'm like.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I came from a little town in Long Island called Carl Place. And Frankie was one of the guys that was one of our friends. And he was a notorious kind of a, greaser kind of a guy. And they used to live out in this house in, what the heck was the name of it? A town. And they would bring girls back to the house and blah, 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 blah. And so that was, kind of like that quote was reminiscent of some of the things that I saw going on in that home.
There you go, Mark. Your mystery is solved. It's almost as much as who did Carly Simon write "You're So Vain" about. It was good. Your moment. Could have been your moment there. Listen, man, I kept you longer than I was supposed to, but
nice to be here.
I appreciate it, man. We could talk forever, and it's always great to share these stories and hear these stuff and talk to the people. So it's so cool. The new album from Steve Vai, again, is available now. It's called The Story of Light. Steve is currently on tour, will be for a while. Go to Vai.com to find a date near you, and take it from me, having just seen the show 2 nights ago. It is simply stellar. And like me, even if you are not a guitar player, one of these days I'm going to learn. I mean, they say it's never too late. I'm 48. I better start quick.
Well, you started out being a songwriter the other night, so.
I'm under no illusion, Steve. I know that my son at 5 years old could have done what I did the other night, but even if you're not a musician like me, you will be floored by this show and so entertained. There's so much going on, so it's great stuff. Go check it out. Look for that date near you. As I let you finally get out of here and enjoy a night in the city here off, give me a song, another song from the new album you'd want my audience to hear.
Do you want to hear a song with vocals? Beverly McClellan sings John the Revelator, and it's pretty fierce.
Yeah, I think we could do 2, so we'll do that, and then right after it, I'll give you, maybe a rip and instrumental one or something.
Okay, yeah, Valorum might be relatively accessible for rock radio.
Okay, John the Revelator is what we'll start with.
Okay.
And this woman is on tour with you now.
Yeah, she opens the show, and she actually performs this song with us occasionally.
And she did the night that I was there, and she's got some voice on her.
Oh, no, that was
that was
Vicky. Yeah, Vicky Martinez. Had Beverly McClellan, who usually does it, had some prior gigs, so she couldn't make those shows. But Beverly is singing here.
Okay, but the woman I saw...
Oh, she was great. She's great. Vicky is fantastic.
Killer as well. Yeah. All right, so this is from Steve's new album, The Story of Light, and we have 2.5 hours live left to go here on this Monday on Sirius XM 39. It's Eddie Trunk Live until 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific, so we have a lot more to do as far as music and discussion and calls. We'll let Steve Vai get out of here. And again, a couple tracks now from his new album, The Story of Light. Thanks again, Steve.
Thank you, man.
Well, who's that riding? John the Revelator. Who's that riding? John the Revelator. Who's that riding?